Here we are. Good morning. Yep, it's on. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good Thursday morning to you. I know the experts say don't give days, don't give dates, because then you're dating your stream, your video. But I think it's important for us to say the date, especially if you're not watching live. By me saying the date, maybe that helps you. Ooh, I'm on the right video, or ooh, I missed a day, and then you can go back and look for it. So today is Thursday, and it's August 26th. And good morning to you. Couple things. First of all, as you can see, I'm Brian. I'm the pastor at Christ United Methodist Church in Waynesboro, and it's great to be with you this morning for another episode of PB Reads the Bible. And we are on episode 27 of our journey through Romans. I think it's 27. Yeah, 27 of our journey through Romans. Don't know what our total number of episodes are. As you can kind of tell from my background, that's not a virtual background, that is real, coming to you from the home office, as Dave Letterman used to say, the home office, although mine is still Waynesboro, not Indiana. Just running late this morning, really no excuse. Couple family things, personal things I had to take care of, I guess you would say. But other than that, I was just moving slowly this morning. Maybe I got sacked by the heat yesterday. I don't know. I'm just running behind schedule a little bit. So rather than rushing to try to get to the office, because you know what's going to happen if I did that. I knew that if I tried to rush and make it to the office, which I probably would have made it in time, guaranteed there would have been a problem with the computer, with the technology, or something somewhere along the line that would have messed everything up. So I'm coming to you from home. Now, for some reason on my screen, my video looks a little glitchy. I hope that's not the case on your end. This does mean that I'm going to do my best to follow along, but I don't have my multiple screens. I have my laptop and I do have my phone. Okay. And I am getting texts as well as watching the video. Good morning, Marcia. Good to see you. Good to have you joining us, I believe, from Michigan. Good morning, Cindy. I assume John is with you as well. Oh, it is just John. Just John. Good morning, John. Good morning, Maureen. And good morning, Marilyn. And received a text from Ron here today. And he said he's here today. He's been watching in reruns, so to speak, and that's okay. You can watch on demand. Apparently we're on demand. And he says, hello, everyone. But then he's got a little prayer thing going here. I was at a stress test yesterday. Oh, it's not a prayer request. It's a joke. I was at a stress test yesterday. Well, Ron, first of all, we're going to turn that into a prayer. We hope that worked out well for you. But after the scan, I asked the girl, do I have a heart? She said, yes, it's in there somewhere. We always knew that, Ron. We always knew that about you. Oh, and good morning from the park, from my honey. She's out with the dog just down the street. I'm going to do my best to follow along for any comments or things that you might be saying this morning. And I'm going to go ahead and plug my computer in just in case. I think I have enough battery power left in it, but I don't want to run out at the last minute. Pardon my disappearance. There we go. I'm plugged in, charging. That might take care of my my glitchiness too, now that I'm thinking about it. Good morning, Joe. Good morning. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Well, first of all, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. you've missed quite a bit, but you're welcome to join us for these last few days on our journey through Romans. But you can always go back and catch up, so to speak, and watch all those. But go ahead and check in, because all I see is numbers of people that are watching, and it's nice to know who they are. Say good morning to me, say good morning to each other. That's even more important. But when you have a question or a comment, put that in the comment section there on Facebook, or send me a text like Ron does, and we'll do our best to answer those. And so when you see me looking down or something, I'm just trying to pay attention. I'm just trying to stay connected to you. See, I have my Facebook stream on here. I'm not playing a game of some form. So a couple announcements. This first thing is in the words of St. Paul from the other day, I appeal to you, sisters and brothers. I implore you, sisters and brothers. If you have not yet been vaccinated, I implore you to please get vaccinated. And even if you are vaccinated, I'm going to encourage you to consider wearing a mask again, especially in public places. The hospitals in our area here in Waynesboro are on diversion. What that means is they have no room for patients. They cannot take any more patients, and patients are being diverted to other hospitals, in some cases an hour and a half away. So, and why? Because of COVID. Because of COVID. Was reading an email from a nurse at one of the local hospitals and talking about that. And yes, most of the people that they're seeing are unvaccinated, but some have been vaccinated. They have underlying conditions and stuff like that. And now seems to be hitting younger and younger people. So please, if you're able to get vaccinated, please get vaccinated. I'm tired. I know everybody is, right? And I certainly don't want to go backwards in how we do things or how we worship. So let's just do what we can to protect each other. Is it about protecting ourselves? Yeah, it's about protecting ourselves, but even more so, it's about protecting other people. John Wesley's our three rules as United Methodists, the three general rules set up by John Wesley: do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. But those first two we can accomplish by just following some of these things, by doing some of these things to try to not hurt each other and do good by a shot. Anyway. Other announcements. Yeah, this is going to be our last one for this week. I'm not going to do a pre-recording for tomorrow because we're kind of ahead of because of what we've done the last several days. We're going to be a little bit ahead of schedule, I think. So, and I got a lot to do today anyway. So today we're going to do the first half of chapter 14, first 12 verses to be specific. There's a lot to talk about in just those 12. So I could probably push and do the whole chapter, but I'd rather not. Let's keep the pace that we've been doing so that you've got it all. I did hear from one other person saying, yeah, maybe studying one of the prophets would be good. And if so, they would also like Daniel. So let me know. If that's what we're going to do, though, I'm probably going to have to take a week or two break in our study in order for me to prepare for that. I think I'm going to have to buy a book or two, and in addition to resources that I already have, and to do the best job I can on that for you. So we'll look at that. I'll look at the calendar. I'll look up some resources to see what I'm going to do. But you let me know if that sounds cool to you or not. So that'll be it. Today will be it for this week, and then next week we'll pop back in. We'll finish up 14, do 15, and do 16. And that'll take us 4 or 5 days Um, we will finish Romans next week. Not bad, not bad. As I really said, it's a dense book. I think you've gotten that idea over the time that we've been doing it as well. Worship on Sunday, of course, at 8:15 and 10:45 in person. 10:45 is also live streamed. Now, if you're in the area, well, of course, if you're in the area, you're welcome to join us for either of those worship services. Love to have you join us. But if you're in the area, you might also consider Sunday evening. We're doing a healing service at the church at 6:30. I'm not going to be live streaming that because that just doesn't transition well. It doesn't kind of hard to do a healing service online. Somebody probably can. I can't really figure out how to do that properly. So we're only doing that'll only be in live in person. But if you're in the area, join us for the healing service. Love to have you. Love to have you there. And I think that's it for announcements. So let's get to work, right? Go ahead and say it. PB, shut up and get to work. Fine, I'll shut up and get to work. So we're going to look at chapter 14. So Paul has been talking to, chapter 13, chapter 12 and 13, we saw Paul was talking what we might say ethics and how to live this Christian life and how to worship properly and the unity within the group. And then he expanded it to how you're supposed to live within the wider group, the wider context. Chapter 14 and 15, he pulls back a little bit, back just to this community of faith. We can see some of the principles that he's talking about, or that we think he's talking about, and yeah, we can expound. We can just use them in our daily life all the time. But in particular, these instructions, these guidelines, these principles, these admonitions are for a Christian community of faith. And it's important for us to remember from way back that Paul is addressing, we think, we believe, disputes, disagreements between Gentile Christians and Jewish Christians. And that these disputes, these disagreements, this antagonism between these two groups, as I've said before, I think I did, I hope I did, is from a couple different reasons, because of ethnicity, because of traditions on both sides, and because Jews were kicked out of Rome and have now been allowed back in, and holding it against each other, holding all those kind of things against each other. And it's even, it's affecting worship. It's also affecting table fellowship. It's also affecting table fellowship. But the idea of our faith, and that's what Paul's going to get into now, that it shouldn't be affecting our table fellowship. Okay. And I'm probably going to be going back and forth a little bit between the NRSV and the NIV. I'm going to point out some differences between the two translations in these first few verses of chapter 14, which reads, and I'll start with the NRSV, "Welcome those who are weak in faith, but not for the purpose of quarreling over opinions." Pause. Welcome those who are weak in faith, but not for the purpose of quarreling over opinions. Now, the NRSV uses a plural, basically, in order to promote inclusion and an inclusive pronoun. They use plural. Welcome those, but in Greek it's very specific, and it's probably important that we recognize that Paul was being very specific with the singular. Because it's not, sort of a general thing. He's talking very specifically. And so the NIV does translate it with the singular, "except him whose faith is weak." Now, is he talking about a particular person? No, probably not. But he wants to make sure that you're welcoming each and every person. and so uses that singular. Whereas when you use the plural, maybe you lose some of that. So he's being very particular, very specific. Welcome him whose faith is weak, without passing judgment on disputable matters. And that ends verse 1 on both. So I hope that you get that, right? The singular pronoun is what Paul used, and it's for a very good purpose. He isn't talking about a particular person, but by using the singular, he's identifying each and every one. So welcome him whose faith is weak. And both of them translated faith is weak, weak in faith. We shouldn't think, this ties back into the other day, Paul isn't saying that you can have more faith than I do, or the strength and weakness of faith. Let us understand it. Actually, the NRSV puts in a footnote saying conviction, which might also, which is a good translation. It's a good translation, and it kind of gets to it. But let's put it this way. N.T. Wright puts it this way: rather than weak in faith, those who have not fully thought out all of the fully thought out their faith and the repercussions of their faith. They haven't had the opportunity to fully understand everything that taking on this faith and how it's going to affect their life. Okay, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense the way I said that. Continuing, some people believe in eating anything, while the weak eat only vegetables. Those who eat must not despise those who abstain, and those who abstain must not pass judgment on those who eat, for God has welcomed them. Pause. What's Paul talking about? Those who eat only vegetables. He's really not talking about vegetarians. Okay, he's talking about people who are choosing not to eat meat, possibly, well, most likely from one or two reasons. Now, who are those who are weak in faith? Paul, obviously, and he'll go on to say it, I believe, perhaps even specifically, that he is strong in faith. He has thought about it, everything. He knows how his faith is going to affect his life, and he understands that. So he's not saying that the Jewish Christians are weak in faith, nor is he saying that the Gentile Christians are weak in faith. There are some in both camps who are going to be weak in faith or strong in faith. So he seems to be he's working at trying to pull these two groups together again to help fully realize this family that he's been talking about for 13 chapters, to fully understand and fully pull together. And it does say, quarreling over opinions, and this was back in verse 1, and NIV uses the word disputable. What's interesting is the same root is in both words as far as quarreling and opinions. So it could be disputing over disputes. Those who dispute over disputes, which is, and that may have been what Paul was trying to say too, because wordplay, a little bit of wordplay going on. But who are those who are eating meat? Who are those who are not eating meat, who are eating only vegetables? And why would they only be eating vegetables? Probably for two reasons. Some for one, some for another. Jewish Christians may be holding on to the dietary restrictions of their Jewish traditions and faith. In other words, kosher foods, not eating pork, not eating this and that, right? Okay, not eating meat that's been boiled in the mother's milk. All those kind of rules and instructions regarding diet. And since they aren't sure if the meat in the marketplace is kosher or not, they're not gonna buy it, because they want to make sure that they're not eating that, and they're only going to eat vegetables. The others, some of the Gentile Christians, may not be eating meat out of concern that the meat has been offered as a sacrifice to one of the pagan gods of the Roman world, of the Roman faith and traditions. And they didn't, which was quite possible, because they would offer meat in temple worship, cultic worship, and then sell it in the marketplace. And so if someone was quote unquote weak in faith, the idea of eating meat that was offered in a temple, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Whereas others saying, go ahead and eat it anyway, right? So you've got those two groups, and there's people in both groups. So it's not Gentiles versus Jew, or Greek versus Jew, or whatever way you want to phrase it here. It's not all the Gentiles in one camp and all the Jews in the other camp. There's some of both in each, and they're judging each other. So in some cases, it's Gentile Christians judging other Gentile Christians because they are eating or because they aren't eating, because of one or the other. But Paul says, not to pass judgment on each other. Don't pass judgment on the ones who don't eat. Don't pass judgment on the ones who do eat. Why? For God has welcomed them. There's that word welcome again. That's how he started this passage, this paragraph, this section of this letter, was to welcome him who is weak in faith. And here he says, for God has welcomed him. So he's making that connection. If God has welcomed them, who are you to try to pass judgment and not? You need to do the same. You need to do the same. Who are you to, and here he makes a further connection. He says, who are you to pass judgment on servants of another? It is before their own Lord that they stand or fall, and they will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make them stand. For the Lord is able to make them stand. Pause. So he's making that connection back to servanthood and being a slave to the Spirit, being a slave to God, which he talked about earlier. No longer, which is a freedom. He did say, as weird as that sounds, but you're no longer a slave to sin. You are instead a slave to God, a slave to the Lord, a slave to the Spirit, which is freedom. But they're servants, they're slaves of God. So you can't be judging somebody else's servant. Don't be judging somebody else's servant. And then he uses that word stand. He says stand or fall, for the Lord is able to make them stand. What does he mean by that? Yes, he can mean persevere. That's usually how we take something like that. So when all else fails, stand, because that's something that he says elsewhere, right? When all else fails, stand. Just be firm. Just be there. Just continue and persevere with everything. However, stand is also, you might say, a code word in early Christianity, in the first century Christianity in particular, for the resurrection. And he might be at least hinting at that, because he goes into talking about judgment. So there is that echo of the final judgment and the ability to raise from the dead. Okay. Continuing, verse 5. Some judge one day to be better than another, while others judge all days to be alike. Let all be fully convinced in their own minds. Those who observe the day, observe it in honor of the Lord. Also those who eat in honor of the Lord, since they give thanks to God. While those who abstain in honor of the Lord, and give thanks to God. Pause. So Paul, yes, he does still talk about food, but he changed it briefly. He adds in this idea of days, what's he talking about? Well, again, he can be, or possibly is, or maybe even probably is, talking about two different things at the same time. And so he's addressing both the Greek and the Gentile Christians and the Jewish Christians at the same time. He could be talking about Sabbath worship and the Judaic festivals and holy days and special days, because some of the Jewish Christians may be hanging on to the particular way of Sabbath observance and holding on to what we would call Saturday as the Sabbath, and holding on to the festivals as outlined in Exodus and Leviticus, etc., with regards, well, Passover, but also the others, Sukkot, and the various harvest festivals. So it could be, maybe, possibly, probably, that he's talking to the Jewish Christians. He might also be talking to the Gentile Christians, what he calls Greek Christians, and they're holding on to special pagan celebrations and days from their past, from their traditions. And so he's saying, you're going to do it, but don't judge each other for doing it, because one day is like the other. Some judge one to be special and better than another, and then different group judges others to be special, while others think that none of them are special, that all days are equal. Don't judge. Well, it's okay. Now, Paul very specifically, when he's writing, I think it's in Galatians, talking about this day, this time of year, this Sabbath, he's really talking there just specifically to Jewish Christians. But here he's talking to both groups. And he goes back to saying about eating. All those who eat in honor of the Lord, since they give thanks to God. So it's kind of, as long as you're offering grace, we might say, it doesn't matter what you're eating, you're doing it for God. You're thanking God for what you have. So it doesn't matter if you eat meat or if you're only eating your vegetables. Just make sure you eat your vegetables so you stay healthy. Continuing. We do not live to ourselves, and we do not die to ourselves. So we have someone else joining us for this part of the Bible study. I'm going to start in verse 7 again. We do not live to ourselves, and we do not die to ourselves. If we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and lived again, so that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living. Pause. Again, that was a long one, but what does Paul mean by that? Especially with all that we do not live to ourselves. The life we live, we do not live to ourselves. Basically, what he's saying is to kind of put your own personal preferences and your own personal passions or desires off to the side for the sake of the other who might be weak in the faith. And don't be thinking, again, he's kind of saying, don't be thinking only of yourself. And what's his reasoning why? To this end, Christ died and lived again. Because Christ did not live for himself. The life Christ lived for the other. So he's comparing that. And since, as he said before, you no longer live in this age, you no longer live in sin, in death, you live in Christ. You should be living like Christ. And so do not live your life. You no longer live your life for yourself. You live it for the other. And then he says, for Christ died and lived again, and so that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. This ties back into what I said, just, said a little bit uh, for from a few verses ago about standing, the idea of standing, being sort of a code for resurrection, seems to tie in here with him saying that Jesus, was raised from the dead to be both Lord of the dead and the living. Continuing, why do you pass judgment on your brother or sister? Or you, why do you despise brother or sister? For we will all stand before the judgment seat of God, final judgment. For it is written, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall give praise to God. So then, each of us will be accountable to God. Pause. End of our passage for today. And Paul ends that with another an echo, a description of the final judgment, saying, and so in so doing, saying that your judgments of each other shouldn't be taking place because God is the ultimate judge. And now, is he saying God the Father? No, because in most other cases, it is in his descriptions and in the descriptions in other places, it's Jesus who is ultimately the judge. But of course, God, the Trinity, would be there and be present. Ooh, interesting. Almost as a tribunal, right? A three-person thing. So the Trinity would be a tribunal in that case. That's just my mind wandering at the last moment, I guess. A synapse fired, and that kind of connection made it through. Anyway, my friends, that's going to be it for today. That was good. Half hour. Woohoo! I do pray that you found this worthwhile and beneficial use of your time today. I pray that God has spoken to you in some way through something that I have said, something that we've read. Pray that you've learned something or relearned something as you go about your days, not just today, but every day. Keep your eyes and ears, physical and spiritual, open for what God is doing in your life and in the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, say, thank you, Papa, and then tell somebody about it, including me. I want to hear, I want to know. Until we meet again, my friends, be